From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. It took 100 years, but scientists say they have proved Albert Einstein's theory that gravitational waves exist. The waves were predicted as part of Einstein's general theory of relativity, published in 1916. The idea is that there are waves in space caused by energetic and violent events. These waves shrink and stretch the space-time of the universe. Now, a group of scientists, including ones from Caltech, MIT, and the LIGO Scientific Collaboration, say they have found these gravitational waves. Imagine throwing a rock into a pond. When the rock hits the flat surface of the water, it creates small waves, or ripples. The gravitational waves are like the ripples moving out from where the rock hits the water. The waves expand and contract space and time as they move through outer space. And when they reach Earth, the waves pass through and contract and expand the planet as the wave goes by. These are not large waves. They are very, very small, which is why it took so long to find them. For years, scientists have also been watching two black holes in another solar system. They were spinning around each other and finally crashed. When they hit each other, it was with such power and force that gravitational waves moved through the universe. Those waves, traveling at the speed of light, finally reached Earth some 1.3 billion years later. These are the waves that the scientists announced they found. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. American and European scientists have new equipment to watch the world's oceans. The Jason 3 satellite launched in January. It is designed to record rising sea levels. Scientists say satellite information recorded over the last 20 years shows sea levels rising fast. They say the fast rising seas are an indicator of climate change. Josh Willis is the lead project scientist for the operation at NASA. He says the Jason 3 satellite collects information using radar. He explains that satellite records have been kept for only about 25 years, but measurements of how the oceans have been changing go back thousands of years. He says the past 2,000 years have been stable in terms of sea level and the Earth's temperature. But in the past 100 years, sea levels have risen quickly. He said that is because of the warming of Earth. All material, including water, expands when heated. The Jason 3 satellite measures how high the surface of the sea is. This permits scientists to estimate how much extra heat is stored in the ocean. Eric Luliet is with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. He says sea levels are an expression of climate change for two reasons. He says excess heat is causing the ocean to expand. And he says the planet's warming causes glacial ice to melt into the oceans and increase sea levels. Luliet says JSON 3 information will help scientists monitor the effects of rising sea levels. He says it will also help in predicting and preparing for big storms. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization is urging farmers to be on guard against transboundary animal diseases. Officials warn that ticks, lice, and other pests can spread quickly from one country to the next. Experts from across Africa say trans-border diseases kill between 10 and 20% of the continent's animals every year. The experts gathered in Cameroon last month to discuss the problem. They suggested large vaccination and anti-pest programs to stop the spread of the diseases. Dr. Taiga is Cameroon's livestock minister. He says pests like nose-bot flies and wool maggots are harming animals in some areas of his country. Dr. Taiga says all animals in an area must be killed if one animal is affected because the diseases are contagious. They spread quickly from animal to animal. He says the FAO and the World Organization for Animal Health are working together to destroy the diseases. Dr. Sebastian Mangamo is an animal pest expert from Equatorial Guinea. He told the conference that diseases caused by pests have killed at least 10% of the sheep and goats in his country this year. Dr. Mangamo says it is difficult to control the movement of animals across country borders. Dr. Felix Njemi is an animal health officer at the FAO. He says the large number of animal deaths is worsening the food crisis in Africa, especially in countries south of the Sahara Desert. He says the diseases can impact food security. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Scientists say Earth is in the middle of its sixth mass extinction. The last such event took place 66 million years ago when an asteroid, a huge space rock, hit the planet. An asteroid strike is blamed for the disappearance of the dinosaurs. Now, scientists are in a race against time to classify or organize into groups the estimated 11 million species alive. Yet only about 2 million species are currently identified. Researchers are worried many will disappear before they even have a name. The United States Botanic Garden has launched a field project with a really big goal. Vicki Funk, a botanist with the Smithsonian Institution, says the effort is part of what Smithsonian officials call the Global Genome Initiative. Its goal is to classify 50% of all plant species. Ms. Funk admits it seems like a huge project, but she says the Botanic Garden is a great place to start. Many species are already growing in botanic gardens, places known for their collections of rare or endangered plants. The aim is to set up a program to classify plants and freeze little pieces of them. 36 partner organizations in 17 countries are to take part. All the plants will be numbered and linked in a computer database with the frozen pieces. These specimens are sent to the Smithsonian Institute's Genomics Laboratory for studies of their genetic material. Jonathan Coddington directs the Genome Initiative at the Smithsonian's Museum of Natural History. He says the project is on target to gather samples from all 10,000 plant and animal families within 5 years. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. A new study has found the amount of antibiotics given to farm animals is expected to increase by 2/3 over the next 15 years. Researchers are linking the growing dependence on the drugs to rising demand for meat, milk, and eggs. The researchers warn the drugs could quicken the development of antibiotic-resistant infections. Such infections are already a major public health concern in the United States. Increasing wealth in Asia means people there are eating nearly 4 times as much meat, milk, and dairy products as they did 50 years ago. To meet that demand, farms now keep many animals in smaller spaces. Gail Hansen is a veterinarian, a doctor who treats animals. She works for the Pew Charitable Trusts. Dr. Hansen says often the easiest way to deal with crowded animals is to give them antibiotics. She says antibiotics help the animals stay healthy in crowded spaces and grow faster. But bacteria can develop resistance to the drugs, and those bacteria can spread to people. Doctors find that antibiotics that once worked against the infections no longer do. In the United States, at least 2 million people get drug-resistant infections each year. At least 23,000 die from infections. Ramanan Lakshminarayan heads the Center for Disease Dynamics, Economics, and Policy. He says the problem is expected to get worse. He believes the use of antibiotics in animals will soon increase sharply. He says that will not be good for human health. Researchers say antibiotic use will double in countries like China, India, and Brazil. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. 3 university students in Santiago, Chile, have come up with a green way to produce power. They developed a device that uses soil to charge mobile phone batteries. The device can also power other small electronics. The engineering students got the idea while relaxing outside, taking a break from their exams. The batteries on their mobile phones were empty. One of the student inventors, Evelyn Aravina, noted that plants are living things and able to produce energy. Their invention is a small circuit board they call Ikaya. The Ikaya solved 2 problems for the engineering students. They needed to come up with a class project. They also needed an outlet to plug in their phones. The Ikaya captures the energy plants produce during a process called photosynthesis. That occurs when a green plant turns water and gas into food or energy as the plant is exposed to light. A plant uses only a small part of that energy to grow. The rest stays in the soil. One of the student inventors says the device changes the energy released from the plant into low-level power to charge phones. The Ikaya device collects the extra energy from the plant without harming it. It plugs into the soil and then into a mobile phone. The Ikaya is able to fully recharge a mobile phone battery in less than 2 hours. The inventors hope that the technology can one day be used for much bigger projects, like public parks. They imagine the power for the park's street lamps coming from its own trees and plants. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Why is it that when dogs drink, water seems to go everywhere? But when cats drink, the water is usually contained. Researchers at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia, have been studying why this happens. They say the mouths of cats and dogs are structured almost the same way. They found that cats and dogs do not have a full set of cheeks. This means they cannot create the force needed to drink, like humans, or elephants, or horses. But here is a surprise. The studies show that each family of animals has its own special drinking method. Sunny Jeong is the study's author and an associate professor of biomedical engineering and mechanics at Virginia Tech University. He says before they did basic studies of how cats and dogs drink, their guess was that it was about the same way. Instead, they found that cats and dogs are quite different when it comes to drinking water. Dogs must quickly move their tongues down into the water to build speed. They curl their tongues backwards and bring the water up and into their mouths. Cats do not bend their tongues. They use less speed and a more gentle action. They just skim or barely touch the surface of the water to drink it. Sean Gart is a researcher and Virginia Tech graduate student. He says cats are viewed as neat and dogs as messy while drinking. But that is because dogs have to move their tongues fast in the water. This makes good use of the way the water motion works. The research findings were published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball. From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Researchers say a new fuel based on whiskey could reduce demand for oil. They say using less oil could cut pollution that studies have linked to climate change. Scotland is the largest producer of whiskey in the world. And a Scottish professor has found how to take the byproducts from distilling whiskey and turn them into a form of alcohol called biobutanol. This product can be used as fuel. Whiskey comes from grain such as corn, rye, or wheat. First, the liquid is purified. It is heated until it becomes a gas. The gas is then cooled and the resulting liquid collected. Martin Tenye is director of the Biofuel Research Center at Napier University in Edinburgh. He says less than 10% of the product can be considered whiskey. The rest is mainly one of two unwanted byproducts, pot ale and barley. Tenye says the two byproducts can be combined to create a new material, biobutanol. He says the whiskey-based biofuel provides more power than bioethanol, a fuel made from plants like corn or sugarcane. And it has almost the same amount of energy as the gasoline used to power automobiles. He says that automobile engines do not need to be changed for biobutanol to work. Tenye does not expect biobutanol to replace gasoline, but he thinks the two fuels can be mixed together. He says it is possible the fuel may also be used in airplanes, ships, and in heaters. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. A new study says a widely used insecticide is damaging wild bee populations. Wild bees are important because they pollinate crops and wild plants. Environmentalists in the United States and Europe say chemicals called neonicotinoids are causing a drop in the number of bees. These insecticides are among the most commonly used worldwide for killing insects that eat crops. Farmers often use seeds treated with the insecticides. They get into pollen and nectar, which is where the bees come into contact with them. May Rundloff is the researcher at Lund University in Sweden who led the study. Her team studied bees in fields. Half of the fields were grown from seeds treated with neonicotinoids. The other half was grown with untreated seeds. Ms. Rundloff spoke about the study in a video for the journal Nature. She said they found that the bumblebee colonies almost did not grow at all in the treated areas. She says there were about half as many wild bees in treated fields as in untreated ones. Dennis van Ingelsdorp is a scientist who studies insects at the University of Maryland. He was not involved with the research, but he said that banning the chemicals might force farmers to use products that may be either just as bad or worse. He said farmers often use the chemicals too much, and that may be hurting bees. Mr. van Ingelsdorp said the chemicals should be used only when necessary. A United States Department of Agriculture report included information about the effects of neonicotinoids. It said the chemicals make the bees sick, so they cannot fight the viruses that commonly affect them. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Many cultures around the world have a grain that is not grown or even known outside its home area. Quinoa is from South America. Amaranth fed the Aztecs in Central America. Now, an ancient grain from Ethiopia is for sale in stores across America. It is called teff. It has been an important part of the Ethiopian diet for thousands of years. The small grain is mainly used to make flour. The Ethiopian flatbread injera is made with teff. Wayne Carlson learned about teff while doing public health work in Africa in the mid-1970s. When Carlson returned to the U.S., he decided teff grass would grow well in certain areas. He says parts of Idaho, Oregon, and Nevada are geologically similar to Ethiopia. Wayne and his wife Elizabeth got some farmers to grow teff. The Carlsons buy and mill the grain. Early on, there were no Ethiopian businesses in Idaho to sell the flour to. So the Carlsons searched the local phone directory for Ethiopian names and called them. The teff company has slowly grown, serving Ethiopian and Eritrean communities in the U.S. Now, The Carlsons say the teff flour they produce also goes to food stores and bakeries. Sales of alternatives to modern wheat are growing quickly each year in the U.S. Rich Roseberg is a food researcher at Oregon State University. He says U.S. teff growing increased from 1,200 hectares in 2003 to more than 40,000 by 2010. He says most of the teff is fed to farm animals. But in Idaho, Roseberg believes more of the teff production is for human food. Teff contains lots of calcium, iron, protein, and fiber. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. The amount of fish being caught worldwide is much larger than has been reported. And that could mean serious problems for the environment and nations that depend on fisheries. A new estimate places the world fish catch at 109 million metric tons. That is 32 million tons higher than the yearly totals governments have been reporting. The same report notes that the world's fish catch has been shrinking since the late 1990s. Countries report their industrial catches to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, but they do not report other kinds of fishing. This includes that fishing done for recreation and individual food, and the catches of small commercial fisheries, known as artisanal fisheries. Daniel Pauly of the University of British Columbia led the study. He noted that a large percentage of the world's fish catch is thrown away. He told VOA that better estimates of the actual global catch will help ensure there will be enough fish in the future. He added that fish catches have been decreasing since 1996. The researchers also found ways that the world's fisheries are changing. It found that fishing fleets of larger nations are catching fish in the waters of developing countries more and more. Daniel Pauly said he was surprised by the amount of fishing done by foreigners in competition with local fishers. He said many European and Asian fishing boats are operating in waters off the coast of West Africa, for example. The online journal Nature Communications published the findings. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.